You know what's annoying? There's a new River City Ransom game out, and yet finding info on it is weirdly difficult, and gameplay videos don't exactly make it look good. So after hearing one of my favorite streamers, Macaw45, express annoyance at this, I decided to make a video going over what's going on with this game, and I may as well share it with all of you too. Keep in mind I'm only in Chapter 2, so this is not a proper review, but it'll at least be informative, so let's dive in. So, River City Saga 3 Kingdoms of course sees Kunio and the gang as the cast of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, with Kunio as Guan Yu and covers from the Yellow Turban Rebellion to the Battle of Red Cliffs. The game has two modes, a big meaty RPG story mode for up to 2 players local and online where you play as Kunio and some glasses guy as player 2, and an arcade mode called China Heroes which supports up to 4 players and has a wide variety of characters with the majority unlocked from the start. Much of the footage you see is of me and a friend streaming Chapter 1 in online co-op on PC, and as you can see the netcode is pretty smooth. Story mode is very RPG-esque, spanning 6 lengthy chapters with a huge honkin' world map, multiple towns where you can buy food, gear, and scrolls to learn new moves, gaining experience, raising stats, and taking on side quests. One point Macaw was particularly confused about was the nature of enemies. Do they just infinitely spawn, or do you have to properly fight them? Well, as you're traveling across the world, you do encounter gangs of enemies. They aren't infinite, indeed they're just like the ones on NES, but yes, you can try and just run past them. These are your random encounters. You fight for money and experience to raise stats and buy new moves. However, you are taking on quests and side quests that often ask you to go to a specific area and defeat all the enemies there, and that's where you're actually forced into a fight, with most of the mission fights being a bit harder than the randos you meet on the road. But in general, this should give you an idea of how progression is. It does feel like it leans a lot more into open world RPG than beat 'em up, what with you traveling from exclamation mark to exclamation mark, clearing quests and taking down foes. As for combat, my big beef is that there's no running, which does feel weird and takes something away from the game. However, it does prevent you from accidentally running into the next area. But what that does mean is that I do recommend an analog stick for the overly smooth movement. In terms of combat options, your buttons are punch, kick, grab, jump, block, and a button you hold down for screen-clearing tactics attacks. As you get moves, they can be assigned to punch, kick, throw, air punch, air kick, unique ones per weapon, a punch-kick simultaneous special move, block plus punch, and block plus kick for super moves, which cost meter, and up to 4 screen-clearing tactics attacks, which are on another meter. It's worth mentioning also that pressing block in a direction will allow you to evade, and there is a time-slowing burst super as well. When playing co-op, the glasses guy has all the stats and skills of your own Kunio, and they keep all the levels and money they find when playing online. Though they cannot talk to NPCs, they're at the mercy of player 1's start button, though they can move away from player 1's screen limit when you're fighting at least. Weirdest thing is that when player 2 opens the start menu, player 1 has to close it for them. Weird, but okay. And that's story mode. Oh, and brace for some dumb platforming too. As for arcade mode, it's exactly what it says on the tin, and significantly more arcadey. You start with almost all the characters unlocked, up to 4 players, no shops, no leveling. Everyone starts with all their skills, and you just go from left to right beating up dudes, and even the size and cadence of enemy waves feels properly arcadey. I'll give them a lot of credit for making each character feel unique too, and as an Abobo fanboy, this may well be the most complete and functional playable Abobo yet. In a beat 'em up anyway, not counting the fighting games. It's also worth noting that Kyoko and Misako are in this game twice. The original Kunio versions appear as strategists, with Misako as Zhuge Liang and Kyoko as Zhao Yu, while the River City Girls versions are the Kiao twins. Meaning Kyoko is married to herself. As the ancient Chinese saying goes, twincest is wincest. Now I want those dojins on my desk by next week or there'll be hell to pay. So, problems with the game? Well, aside from the lack of running, we do have some enemy AI that likes to hide off screen. The invincibility on enemies when they wake up is way too friggin' long. You have a tendency to stay knocked down for an excessive amount of time too, and you can get in bad situations where you just get ganged up on. However, before I go, I do need to mention the biggest and most confusing issue, the save system. My advice, read! After playing online with my friend as the guest, I lost all my story progress in the chapter, but I kept all my levels and equipment and unlocks and fast travel. That last bit made replaying and finishing the chapter quite easy, so this is less of an issue than I thought. But this game treats chapter progress almost like an interrupt save. It actually tells you that joining co-op or returning to chapter select will cause you to lose your current chapter progress. But it's on those screens we usually skip past and don't think much about. Saves are automatic with no manual option. I think this is weird as heck, but I think I understand it now. That said, if you've unlocked the next chapter, you do not lose that, just progress within the chapter, so keep that in mind. I'm only on Chapter 2, so this isn't a full review, but from what I've played, I will say the game is definitely not polished. Weirdly, while I don't like it as much as the original NES game and its GBA remake, I do consider it better than the 3DS game, somewhat. I think this is because while the 3DS games tried to be more of a beat-em-up than this, their combat didn't really evolve past the NES game, and they just felt inferior. It was like the NES game again, but just... they didn't add much. Meanwhile, this game at least has more and flashier moves, and by leaning harder into being an RPG, it sort of makes up for the combat issues somewhat. However, absolutely look at this more as an action RPG than a beat-em-up, and brace for a little jank. Anyway, this is Gel, and you've been Game Babbled. See ya.